begin the meeting. Thank you. All right, welcome everybody to the Lehigh County Authority Board of Directors meeting of August 26, 2024. This meeting is being recorded. Have a roll call of the Board of Directors, please.
Roll call of the board: Brian Noggle.
Here.
Amir Famili.
Here.
Ted Lyons.
Here.
Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Norma Cusick.
Here.
Ben Baker.
See you.
We see you, Kevin. Can you hear us? Okay, we'll come back to Kevin. Linda Rosenfeld. Here. Sean Ziller.
Here.
Mark Ramis. Kevin Baker.
Yeah.
Board members present. So you have
Okay, thank you very much. Packet was delivered to the board members in advance. There hasn't been any changes since then?
Nope.
Okay. All right, let's begin review of the agenda and any need for executive session.
All right, so there's no changes to the agenda today. However, we are requesting an executive session following the close of the regular meeting to discuss potential litigation and property acquisition.
Okay, thank you. Move now to the approval of the minutes from the August 12th, 2024 board meeting.
And they be approved.
Okay, motion made to be approved by Linda and seconded by Amir. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 You may abstain since I was very late to the last meeting.
Any opposed? All right, one abstention. All opposed.
Wait, Lisa, would I have to abstain since I departed early?
He was here for the bulk of the meetings, so I think that you could vote Sean.
Then aye, yes.
Okay, at this time, we open up the meeting to any public comment. On any item other than what is on the agenda.
No, thanks, Brian.
No, thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian and Jenny. Moving on to action and discussion items. We have two under finance and administration. The first one is the 2025 to 2029 capital plan for suburban division and administrative projects for discussion, with preliminary plan presentation.
Right. So last week or 2 weeks ago, we did the Allentown division plan, and today we're going to go on to suburban. We have another amazing presentation for you. For the screen sharing going. Yes. A lot of work goes into pulling these plans together. So I'm going to introduce a couple of the topics, but then turn it over to Chuck and then Ed for project review and financials. We reviewed this last time, which is the process, and just to orient everyone of where we are in the process. We are at the 5-year capital plan stage, which is conceptual approval of an overall program. And then we have these other connection points along with our budgets, our project approvals, and financing. So there's lots of bites of the apple in terms of how we get projects approved. Again, this is conceptual 5-year plan. Last time around, we presented the Allentown division draft plan. Today, we're presenting suburban division as well as the administrative projects, and that's going to kick off our public comment period, which will go through the end of September. We'll bring all those comments back to you if we receive any, and any final edits in October for review. And that will coincide nicely with the preparation of our budget. So this year's suburban division capital plan does have some key changes from the prior plan that I wanted to go over. Specifically in terms of dollars, last year's 5-year plan was $67 million. This year is $101 million. The lion's share of that change is related to one project, and that is the pretreatment plant replacement or upgrade project that we spoke about at the last meeting. So those costs have been added to the plan, and significant discussion will take place before that project gets kicked off. We did reduce some of our cost impact by completing some projects. We also added this year PFAS treatment for the Bush Acres system, which is required. So those are the major changes that you'll see, and many others that Chuck and Ed will go through. Couple major differences between this plan and the Allentown plan. Number one, the lead issue is a much bigger issue in Allentown. So we have not included any specific costs on the suburban side. And I think we're still kind of in the investigative stage on the suburban side to know what the scope of that will look like. And another major caveat is that we presented the Allentown plan 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of projects in that plan that will pass through in terms of cost sharing to the suburban communities, because a lot of that is in flux under municipal agreements and not currently known, though that pass through hasn't really been calculated as far as this presentation is concerned. Will certainly be passed through and calculated as part of the budget and the rate community process. So that's something we wanted to share. And then in terms of the regional Act 537 plans, are projects related to the Act 537 plan. We have included those projects in this plan. However, it has a much less of an impact on the suburban division plan because most of the projects in the first 5 years are happening in the Allentown division at Klein's Island and the relief interceptors and whatnot. So, as we move forward into future years, those projects will begin to migrate towards suburban division. That's the summary of the plan, and we'll get right into, I think, some details. Turn it over to Chuck.
Thanks, Liesl. So we'll start with the administration projects. This is largely unchanged from last year. You can see the same projects. The Munis implementation next year will be the last year for that. So there's $385,000 budgeted, tentatively budgeted. It's not a budget yet, but it's the capital plan number to complete the Munis implementation. The main office improvements, what that project is comprised of, it's a parking lot expansion out front. It's renovations to the Capital Works Department and the study of the redo of whatever we're going to do to expand office space. And if you recall, a couple months ago, we presented a concept and we were the board was unsure about that and we sort of tabled it. So we're looking at either remote property or doing something different. Here are the annual projects. The breakdown is on the following slide. Water main replacement projects, those are annual projects, except we're not doing one next year per the budget. But those are routine. And there's a breakdown of what the annual projects are comprised of. Everything from general water system improvements and mobile equipment to reservoir rehab, asset management, upgrades, capital management, those kind of things, security, SCADA. And here are the suburban division water projects. These are the system improvement projects. The first one there is cloud-based AMI meter reading system. That's basically a telemetry upgrade to reduce the amount of operations effort to read the meters, a wireless system, basically. There's master planning, water system master planning, and water quality upgrades. That project is started with a supply study and a storage assessment, and it's primarily with our smaller systems or smaller satellite systems, looking at water quality issues there. Liesl mentioned Bush Acres, a separate standalone PFAS project, but that came out of a study. There's the upper system pump station and water main extension. I have a map showing that on one of the following slides. That's a proposed pump station to move water from our lower system underneath I-78 to a booster station to provide it to our upper system for future development. This project is basically development driven. Right now, we're on we basically substantially completed the design and we hit the pause button, waiting for the need to come around for a developer to surface and help fund building that station. There's the water meter replacement program. That's an annual meter to replace meters that are aging out or at the end of their useful life. And lastly, we have the central Lehigh system supply improvements. That includes, this is a resiliency item. It includes another interconnection potentially with South Whitehall Township. Basically, we're looking at if the largest source of supply is down, for instance, the city of Allentown interconnection. How do we guarantee resilience in the central Lehigh division?
Chuck, just a question on the water meter replacement program.
Yes.
Why not that being an annual project?
Yeah, I mean, we could package it under the annual. It's a big ticket item, but
I think originally we were doing them in larger chunks.
it wasn't
frequently.
really annual
Yeah,
before. But it became annual just recently, working with Amy Kunkel, working with customer care with Brooke. We developed an annual program, so we could put that under annual.
I'm not suggesting you do that, but I was wondering if there's like an end after so many years, made all the replacements, and then we have a pause for so many years after that. Or is it just going to be continuous? That would lead me towards more of a thing.
Yeah, right now we're showing every year we're going to be doing meter replacement. I mean, at some point we will be caught up for a certain amount of time, I would think.
a little bit difficult in our suburban division because system grew over time and meters have lots of different install dates. Whereas in the city of Allentown, they did a massive meter replacement all in 1 year. So it's a little more like all the meters are the same age. In suburban, they're all replaced in terms of their age. So.
Yeah. So here's a map showing the proposed location of that booster station that will move water from the lower system to what we call the upper system. And so that's the brewery property, the lower right-hand corner to orient yourself. And Main Street, Fogelsville is north of there, just off the map. Here's two new projects. We already mentioned the Bush Acres water quality upgrade, that's for the PFAS. So right now we're looking at an upgrade at the station itself, and real estate is very limited there. So it could be more advantageous to bring a line from our central Lehigh division. We have to cost those two alternatives out. And then
They're at the top of the hill there, so.
it is.
We did well testing it, came up with a whole bit about PFAS.
Yeah, there were some exceedances of the maximum contaminant levels.
But yeah, we're unsure of exactly where it's coming from in that location. Yeah, it is kind of odd.
Then the other project here, the other new project is the Applewood Pump Station. That's an upgrade there where we have some pumps that are at the end of their service lives and also a fire pump that needs replacement. And here's a picture of Bush Acres in Upper Milford. There's the picture on the left. You see the control chemical building and then the tank behind it, the beautiful green tank. And then just another view on the right-hand side. And then this is the Applewood Pump Station. And there's an exterior shot and then an interior shot of the to regular duty pumps. Head slide.
Okay. So total spending for the 5-year period will be a little bit more than 38 million. Where are we getting it from? We're gonna take about $18.8 million from current rates, inflows, and some reserves. We're going to borrow $19,700,000. We will borrow that in year 2026. That should cover 26, 27, and 28. So total sources, matching capital spending of $38.5 million. You can see the commentary on the bottom. Where we get in some of the operation, cash flow and reserves, admin projects will be about $800,000 worth of capital spending. The annual projects are about $11.8 million that we're paying for out of current rates and reserves. Water meter replacement projects, $4.4 million. Again, not coming from borrowed money. And then other projects worth almost $1.8 million. We did budget a volume increase of 1% a year. That seems to be about the average. Sometimes we run a little bit better. That's about the incremental volume every year. In terms of rates, across the board, we went with 4.6% through years 1 through 5. In terms of the $19 million of project money that we're borrowing $12.3 million of that for main replacement. $3.2 million will go towards the North Whitehall system. $2 million plus in upper system pump station, and then other system improvements, a bunch of projects, $2.2 million.
You just make a comment on the upper system pump station, the $2 million for that project that may come out of borrowing if we identify a developer that's going to pay for some portion of that project.
Okay. In terms of cash flows, you can see I'm just going across the net fund flow line. We're negative in 2025. Get a positive number, 12.1. That's coinciding with the amount of money that we're borrowing. Then we hit -7, -2, and -1.8. So altogether, when you add in the 5-year period and you include the $12 million plus the borrowing, I think if memory serves me, I don't have it on me, it's like $347,000 of net cash flow for the 5-year period. Again, we talked about the volume increase of 1% and 4.6% rate increase to cover the debt service that will be coming on board. Our current debt service would be like $3.5 million on the top up there. We're going to add another $1.2 million to that debt service line when we take on the borrowing in 2026. In terms of cash balances, we look okay. Days cash on hand, we go from 277 to 261 and climb back up to 84, 329, and then using some up again in 2029, but all above 180 days, so good with that. And on debt service, we start out at 2.2, obviously drop a little bit when we take on large debt, and then start building back up at 1.74, 1.88, and 2.04 at the end of the period. So we meet all the criteria for debt service coverage. We meet our internal criteria for cash days on hand.
Okay, thanks, Ed. So now we'll get into the suburban wastewater projects.
So I have a question. How do you figure the interest rates on new debt?
Basically, we're in the neighborhood of 4.5% to 5% now, tax exempt, probably a little more toward 4.5% these days, based on what's happening in the economy and signals from the Fed. that are out there now. So it's possible that even as we get on more toward the end of September and October, when we actually start to see some things, that 4.5 might even be on the high side. So we stayed on the conservative level right now.
Thank you.
It's a quick question. For the upper system, the $2 million that we talked about, regardless of there is a developer or not, we're going to go ahead with that project, or we want to first make sure there is a developer before we go ahead with the project?
I think our plan was to, we have it in final design, permit ready status. Then we would just hold until we had more direction on what was going to happen with that property that would need. It's right across the highway from the pump station. So if we would identify a developer and they had the water need for it, then we would ask them to share in that project cost.
But normally we try to recover all the costs from the developer in that area.
It would depend on, like, if we were doing the project for a broader need besides new development, then we would build it and charge it through a tapping fee. But because we have the supply in the area now for the current needs, this is really more about growth, then we would just hold and have the developer pay more directly toward a share of the project.
Thank you.
This is the property that is targeted to be developed by a dairy company, right? And they pulled out of it, but they were going to pay for lion's share of that.
It is zoned for light industrial, so there's been a number of interested prospects for that property, but all looking at some form of light manufacturing and having a water need that we're currently thinking would be supplied by the state.
Is that the project that was using the existing casing pipe under the highway?
Yes, yep. That pipe was installed and tapped that pole.
Right.
Okay, so here we get into the suburban division wastewater projects. The first one there is Central Lehigh wastewater capacity planning and expansion. That's Act 537 planning and also an upgrade of meter stations 1 and 2. So we can more accurately trend weather flows in the Western Lehigh. The next one, Western Lehigh Interceptor rehab and repairs. That's there's going to eventually be some test and seal work downstream of Spring Creek Pump Station, but this is just planning numbers right now. We're not sure exactly when that will take place or what the scope of that will be. Then we have Spring Creek Pump Station force main condition assessment. This is to use a broadband electromagnetic technology to assess what the condition, structural integrity and the condition of that pipe. This is related to Act 537 planning. It's a critical piece of infrastructure. It's a single point of failure. The pipe has been in the ground for about 34 years. So we want to assess the condition at 9 locations. And what it basically is, it's this electronic stuff that straps around the outside of the pipe and it measures the thickness and any irregularities in the interior surface. Spring Creek Pump Station upgrades, that's an electrical project. The board approved the construction phase several months ago, and that's mostly replacing VFDs, and there's some mechanical upgrades too down at the station. The VFDs are at their end of their service life, so it's primarily electrical. Spring Creek force main relocation. This is the project driven by the turnpike widening on Lower Macungie Road, and we, LCA, must pay 50% of the cost to relocate our force main. So that's being designed by the turnpike's engineer. We're just on the hook to pay our fair share next year. Signatory I&I, investigation and remediation. This is to comply with Act 537 directives for the Western Lehigh Interceptor, more I&I mitigation related work. We're not sure exactly what that's going to look like as far as the scope. It's gonna be some grouting of laterals, maybe some test and seal work, just in compliance with Act 537. Moving down, we have Upper West Lehigh Interceptor Pump Station and Force Main. That force main is installed and now we have to build the pump station, and the board authorized construction of that 2 or 3 months ago. So that will proceed and finish next year. And the last one on the list is Park Pump Station upgrade. The generator, it took 18 months to get the generator. A Cummins natural gas unit. There's only one generator in the world that would fit this application. And the contractor did receive it. So Al Burrell is going to be installing it this fall, and that project will close out early next year. So we're happy to finally get that piece of. Here's a shot. You've probably driven by stuff like this already. Just some of our Western Lehigh Interceptor challenges. And this is it might be kind of hard to see. This is the route of the force main from the Upper Western Lehigh pump station as part of the interim Act 537 plan. So it goes along the bypass there, 222, ties into a manhole right near Grange Park, a township, an Upper Mac manhole. To get the flow, to bypass the flow around what we call the Trexlertown bottleneck, which is roughly behind the 1760 grill and down through Ancient Oaks. This is a picture of the Spring Creek Pump Station upgrade project, the VFDs that will be replaced. And here are the satellite system projects, starting with Wynwood, the Wynwood wastewater collection system. It has some leaky parts. We're going to do an interior lining project this fall up there, and we'll be doing several projects to try to seal that system, make it tighter. Arcadia West mechanical screen, that's our industrial plant over in Weisenberg Township off the New Smithville exit. But we are going to put 2 mechanical screens to take out the bulky inorganics and especially the wipes that industries seem to, they're addicted to using wipes and they cause a real maintenance problem in the plant. So the operations will be very happy to, it will reduce a lot of effort up there, a lot of problematic maintenance in the SBR tanks. Next project is North Whitehall Township Act 537 plan. As the board is aware, we're teaming with North Whitehall to partner with them on their Act 537 plan, and with the idea of possibly regionalizing all these little plants that are in numerous drainage basins in the township. Then we have Heidelberg Heights. We have a leaky system up there, as you guys know from the compliance reports. To date, we've replaced all of the public sewer main. All the clay sewer main has been replaced. All the public side clay laterals have been replaced. Now it's just the private side that we continue to get wet weather leakage into the system, and we're convinced it comes from the private side, which is not a very popular project program to adopt, but we have to do it. We have to get the water. So.
Have you done the smoke testing on there?
We did, and we did some basement inspections. We got about 26% cooperation from the residents. We didn't find any smoking guns, so to speak. Yeah, we found some broken lateral clean out caps, but we didn't find any sump pumps. But we only were able to get into a quarter of the houses. So we have to be more aggressive with our inspection, maybe get some legal assistance to be able to go into all these houses. There is a township ordinance that in 2019, I went to a couple township meetings and we got the Board of Supervisors to adopt an ordinance giving us the authority to enter homes, you know, and inspect private side plumbing. So we do have the authority, it's just not popular.
Chuck, you still have clay lateral though, from the public termination point to the house too,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Clay, or we're not sure, it could be cast iron.
Okay.
But we are working with Arcadis to inspect the laterals now, to go up with a camera and see how far we can go. Yeah, we'll get there. The next project is Heidelberg Heights wastewater treatment plant rehab. This is kind of a collection of smaller projects, just like asset management related projects to update instrumentation, painting projects, you know, to keep the plant in good repair. Sand Spring, this project, this is what we call a process intensification project. The board approved this quite some time ago, it was maybe 6 or 8 months ago. And this is to bring us into compliance with DEP. We have a problem up there. You folks read Andrew's reports. So we're basically dumping a bunch of pasta wheels in the SBR tanks. And what it provides extra area for bugs to grow. Basically for like biological slime, kind of like what you get in a plastic media trickling filter. You get this slime that clings to all the surfaces, and that's what provides your biological treatment. So it's a little different, but it's kind of the same principle. We're hoping that works. All the modeling that was done to date by our engineer shows that it works. So we feel pretty good about it. That's contractors mobilizing next month, and we'll do that. So that will be done early next year. It'll wrap up early next year. Lynn Township, I think it was last meeting, construction phase was approved to build a new final clarifier up there. So operations is excited for that because we only have one little 20-foot diameter clarifier, and if that goes down, it's definitely a compliance nightmare. That's been in constant operation for 25 years. And the last one on the list is Lynn Township I&I investigation. We have wet weather problems up there too. We're subject to a corrective action plan with DEP. We have to investigate the private site up there as well. Kind of using Heidelberg Heights as like a pilot project to see how that goes, and then focus our attention in the Nutropoli area.
Chuck, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, when you do the budgeting for these things, do you do all this in-house?
No, not all of it. I mean, we get help from our consultants with budgeting. I mean, some of the smaller projects, we do our own.
You see a lot of zeros at the end, you know, it's like a bunch of guys sitting around the room, but.
Well, hey, at least I didn't put cents. I mean, it's rounded up.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm not putting pennies. This is the existing final clarifier at Lynn Township, up in Nutropoli. The new one will be built just above that one in the yard area near the bend in the fence. It was already piped in when they built that plant. They stubbed the pipes for a future final clarifier, so that was some foresight. So these are the annual projects under the suburban wastewater, and they're comprised of all these things, from mobile equipment and general sewer system improvements to asset management, capital management, and then little improvements in some of the satellite systems and SCADA. These are two new projects in the capital plan. The first one is an Act 537 special study for a parallel pipe to follow the Western Lehigh interceptor And this will begin, I believe the timing is after 537 approval, Phil?
Yeah, towards the back half of this decade is when we'll start that study to finalize the alignment.
So to install a parallel line, I'm not sure how long that line will be.
Miles.
Yeah. And that will be a difficult project with, floodplain, environmentally sensitive areas. And hopefully some of that can be installed via boring, via like directional drilling to reduce disturbance. And then the other project here is Wynwood wastewater treatment plant expansion. This is a developer-driven project. The developer is named Access Rising Sun in North Whitehall Township. They received conditional approval for a large residential development adjacent to the property where our wastewater treatment plant sits. And they are going to fund, they're going to reimburse for the cost of this because this expansion that's necessary to accommodate the build out of the development. We don't need the capacity. They need the capacity, so they are going to fund this project. Although we show a construction number in there, but it will be basically a pass-through.
Does that plant have any odor issues or any outside open, not sludge bins or anything?
No, in fact, I was there last Friday and it didn't smell at all, but wastewater guys like us, sometimes we don't, they don't smell it, right?
Yeah.
But no, the people I was meeting up there, they didn't smell a thing either. It performs well. I mean, it's weird because it's on the top of a hill, which you usually don't find wastewater plants on the top of a hill. That's the way the developer designed it back in the 90s.
I was just thinking if anything needs to be enclosed or covered or can,
Oh, yeah.
developer should pay for that too.
Yes. If the developer, I believe is going to add a new equalization tank, and that definitely needs to be covered.
Mhm.
Check on the parallel alignment, number 27 there. From where to where?
I'm gonna have to turn to Phil on this one.
In between the 1760 house, I always get that name, 1760 house in the PTP. So let's say halfway in between there,
That's a whole line from.
all the way down, all the way,
60 house, all the way through H and Oak.
all the way down past Country Club. and irrigation.
Yeah, there's a system there now, piping there now, but always underwater. So are we talking parallel and then close by or alternate routes or that's just it, parallel?
Right now, the best we have is just follow the existing pipe as close as we can. And so again, with, not to get off too off topic, but with the catch relief interceptor down in the city, DEP demanded an alignment within 20 feet. So that's why we had to do the pre-work this past year to get the borings done. They did the same commentary for this. And they're demanding the alignment within 20 feet before they approve it. So they
still need this on top of the other line that we're pressurized line that we're putting in that approved is constructed and we have to put the pump station in. Still needed.
Yeah, as of now, yes.
Well, the interim 537 plan, that pump station, that's to shave off dry weather peaks, right? But it won't handle wet weather.
Yeah, so for the regional 537, the alignment is where the parallel is going to go in, but again, it's not going to be, nothing, it won't be approved by DEP until the special study is done. So there'll be more chances to take a crack at opportunities.
So I think that kind of the hedging on that, the answer also has to do with the timing because it's 10 years out from construction, just about, 8 to 10 years. A lot could happen in terms of growth, eye removal, all kinds of things that could impact our potential need for this project.
Thank you.
And then these are the pretreatment plant projects. The first one there, those are That this project is in the capital plan every year. It's comprised of annual improvements there, new equipment to replace aging equipment, all the routine capital pavement, SCADA security upgrades. The hauler traffic really beats up the pavement, so there's always an annual paving project. The following project, that's a new project, the pretreatment plant critical upgrades. The purpose of this project is to address high-risk issues at the plant for the short term. One of the items is a rehab of the two final clarifiers. There was a failure of some equipment about a year ago that caused some issues down at Klein's Island, and it really drew our attention to the fact that this equipment is aging. It's 34 years old because the plant went online in 1990. So we have to pay attention to some of the higher risk process areas of the plant. Another area that requires some immediate attention is the cryogenic plant, the oxygen plant. There's some serious work needed there just to limp along for the short term and buy us some time there. There's other projects in that under that critical upgrade, HVAC improvements of the belt press area where we have sludge dewatering. It's very unhealthy area and has high hydrogen sulfide. We need better HVAC equipment in that building. And then lastly, this is another new project. So this is a total reworking of the pretreatment plant. And this is contingent upon participating industries. This is basically a process change. It involves a major change in how waste is treated and the type of waste that are brought in. And it would enable decommissioning of the cryogenic plant, which is a big plus because it's a huge maintenance headache. It's a huge cost. So I don't know if you want to talk about this one a little bit, AJ.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we're calling it PTP 2.0. It's basically starting over, getting rid of the old facilities that are no longer, will no longer be operational in the near future and replacing it with an anaerobic treatment process. So instead of all the energy and costs of the cryo, for oxygen, we're actually going to use anaerobic digestion to break down wastewater. This plant is much different in terms of what it's treating. It's only treating industrial wastewater and only those industries that are interested in participating. So the flow is a lot lower, the strength is higher. We can use this other process to treat the waste. We're also changing the effluent. Right now, we treat down to 25 ppm of BOD and TSS. The new plant will be around 250. So it's going to be a different process. We're calling it the load shift. The load is going to be transferred down to Klein's Island. So yeah, there's a lot involved with this one, but that's kind of in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. So this is the big ticket item where you see the increase in the capital plan costs for this plan versus last year. This wasn't part of the capital plan last year. Here's a shot of the final clarifiers at the pretreatment plant. These are our focus. We're going to fast track this project and get these upgraded. We think with the proposed process upgrade that AJ talked about, basically the plant replacement, we're pretty sure that we will reuse these final clarifiers, that they will be required for some tertiary treatment just to get us to 250 milligrams per liter TSS and BOD. So it's a mechanical upgrade project. It's replacing all the rotating equipment, all the steel.
On your 5 years plan, in what year do you plan to replace or upgrade these clarifiers?
It will be upgraded next year.
Next year.
Yep, I'll be bringing that to the board in a month or so for approval.
So these clarifiers are now cleaning it up to what level, and then you're proposing to take it up to 250?
Down to about, like AJ said, about 25 milligrams per liter, total suspended solids, and 25 BOD.
That's current.
Yeah,
So maybe picking up on Jeff's comment, will be odor with this increase in the, well, TSS is not an issue, but BOD?
I believe the tank is covered, the UAS.
Yeah, the UASB definitely, that process is covered. As far as covering the clarifiers, we haven't really thought about that. It's possible they may need to be covered. But the anaerobic process is sealed. That's a high odor producing process.
Yeah, I've never seen final clarifiers covered. I've seen primary clarifiers covered. So definitely get some odor. Klein's Island, they're covered. Yeah, I don't know. I think we would have to cover them.
Okay, funding for these project come from the user today?
So basically, you're talking about $45.1 million worth of PTP, critical path and PTP 2.0. We expect to borrow $44.6 million. So you could say we're borrowing for these two projects.
Yeah, so is that? To clarify, which number is that? That's $7 million.
That's part of the seven. Yeah, the clarifier is only a portion of the 7 million. There's a number of other projects that make up the 7 million.
Right, the cryogenic, what we call a turnaround, which is totally like refurbishing the cryo plant, including the cold box, taking it down for 3 or 4 months.
So the clarifiers would be part of that $7.5 million project. That is paid for borrowing.
You have a lot to work out in terms of how this gets paid for.
Okay, for sure. Okay, that's fine.
To that point, question. These are all budgets. When do you go to market to actually do the borrowing? Do you go off the budgets here, or do you wait for firmer pricing, or so you don't miss borrow?
It's a balance between budget timing and market timing. We try to go out when the market is a little bit more receptive to us with respect to interest rates. I mean, if we put a $44.6 million, say, borrowing amount for next year, I mean, obviously I got to complete that sometimes next year, or we're gonna have a problem. But I would look more in March.
But I mean, how do you know if the numbers are good?
We run a test on it. We run a test on the interest rates versus the other options to determine what is the best option.
No, I mean, in terms of their budgeting, how do you know the veracity of their budgeting vis-a-vis your borrowing? Is there ever a disconnect?
You mean in terms of how much?
Well, throw it out. That's what I'm asking.
I'm sorry.
They may have miscalculated.
I can honestly say that generally speaking, when we borrow in 3-year periods, we tend to work it off over a 3-year period, which is why I like to do borrowing for a couple of years, because it's a little bit more graceful than a year at a time. Now, as you get into the economics that we're looking at today, I chose to stay on annual basis because there's too many unknowns right now.
And I guess this situation is just so different and unique, where in the water side, he's showing the $19.7 million it's going to cover a 3-year period. All these different projects will be paid by a single borrowing. In this situation, we're talking about really 2 distinct projects.
I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, no, let me just finish though. So for the pre-treatment plant 2.0, the 37.6 million, we're not going to borrow for that until we have clarity on who's paying for it, how much they're paying, and what the project cost is. That we're going to do more of a project specific borrowing for that project.
What was my question?
Yeah. We should,
Huh?
here we go.
Yeah, right in. That's easy enough for you. So a total of a little bit more than $64 million worth of projects, which is quite the number, at least since I've been here. Where it's coming from, you'll get about almost $20 million coming from operation cash and reserves, which would be rate basis. New borrowing of $44.6 million. So total sources are $64.3 million against the capital spending. Just kind of detailing the cash from operations of 19.7 million. You got admin is 800,000. The annual projects worth $3.2 million are going to come from current rates. The wastewater pretreatment plant, it's 2.8, that's the normal stuff. WLI is $7 million coming from current rates, and LLRI, $300,000. And then to top it off, the satellite system of $5.6 million. The borrowing, 44.6, as we talked about, that's all dedicated toward the two projects.
Just at some point in the future, we used to have projections of our borrowing and our paybacks and increase to that stuff that went out long-term, not just 5-year, but we could see that again sometime in the next couple of months, just projections of where we're heading with regard to total borrowing and paybacks and when things are due. Bonds are due, things like that.
Yeah, okay. I think, like Lisa said, there's a lot of unknowns in this fund, and I think it's going to take some time to unravel some of the unknowns. So we've kind of stayed with numbers that we think we need. As I'm going through like for instance, the user charges. You're seeing almost $20 million worth of user charges in 2025, and that's going to go all the way up to $20.8 million. Now, some of that is just regular increase. Some of that is signatory changes that reflect O&M. The bigger part of this is I've got a line item in the operating revenues that is industries only for debt service related to the $44.6 million, and that is a big chunk of that total user charges. Almost in the neighborhood of $2.9 million as you get into the last year, which, as I sit here today, we don't have the agreement in place to do that. But it's a need. If I borrow 44.6, I've got to get payback somehow, or we're not going to be able to borrow it. So I'm really out there with, well, this is what we're going to need to get to do this. A lot of things have to happen in between to make that happen, but that's where we're at. Operating expenses really only show just changes in inflation. I think I used 3.5, 3.25, ratcheted it down to 2.5 and 2.0. I mean, the experts are bantering, is it going to be 2.5? Who cares? We stayed conservative. The current debt service is like $1.2 million through 2029. As you borrow 40-some million dollars, you see what it's happening there. Almost 700,000 goes to 1.9, goes all the way to 2.9. And again, going back to my previous statement, well, that 2.9 we need to get from the industries in some type of an agreement. There's the CAPEX as it flows through all the years, 18 million to 21 to 20.5, and then it kind of drops off the bottom at 2.2 and 1.3, and that kind of helps the cash flows. The first 3 years are affected by whether we did or didn't borrow, and then the last years it kind of stands on its own because your capital is not very high in the last 2 years. Altogether, look at the balances, and the cash balances look fine, but some assumptions made here. Days cash on hand, we're hovering at 180 for the first couple of years, goes back up to 224, 276, so not unexpected, okay with that. 3.47 in debt service coverage ratio drops a bit as you keep borrowing and gets all the way down to 1.99, but our internal target's 1.2, so we're holding our own against the targets for cash days on hand and debt service coverage ratio again. It's lots of things need to happen for even us to be able to do this.
So Ed, just a question. So the current debt service is about 1.2 million. And 2029, it would be then the combination, so it'd be about 4 million potentially?
4 million.
Okay, so that's not, the new isn't, gotta add the new to the current.
The 2.9 is the new.
Plus
Adds
the
on to the
existing.
1.2.
So it could go from 1.2 to 4.
And as I discussed, keep an eye, we're safe with the 1.2, we have that.
Right.
It's the 2.9 I don't have.
Right.
How long does that run out?
That'll run out for a 30-year period. So we usually borrow in 30-year periods unless we're talking about maybe refinancing stuff and then we'll look at different terms.
And again, big caveat of the day, it depends on the agreements that we craft with the industries. So the information that we've provided to the industries includes what they potentially could contribute up front if they have that capacity for CapEx. They potentially could contribute some of that 44 million up front, or we finance it for them and we would finance it in accordance with what we agree to. So some of them might want a 10-year financing period because they can't commit longer than that, or something else. All of that has to be worked out.
I was just curious as to trying to balance the planning for the borrowing and what the actual demands are going to be. And if we miscalculate, if we borrow too much, well, then you can always pay it back, right? Can you prepay it or?
We can pay it back. We usually try to take on debt that doesn't bite us in the behind.
Or, we have too much money, we'll just.
And to be honest with you, Ted, if we had, in this particular instance, if we had one or two projects where we they overestimated the cost, we didn't spend that much and borrowed it, I'm sure there's another project coming up that we could use that on as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, I'm just talking it through, and conversely, if we underestimate, then we're gonna have to just go to market again and make up the difference.
Then that becomes more of a problem.
Yes.
So we talked about a lot of different things. The suburban division plan is really varied. We've got small systems, we've got water, we've got wastewater, we got regional systems, we have this industrial program. It's a lot to capture in a single presentation. So the recap is that overall, the total plan has only increased by $34 million. Primary driver is that pretreatment plant project that we've been talking about. There's a lot of unknowns related to where the industries are going to land in the decision-making process, what their commitments will be financially, and then how do we borrow in a way to match those commitments moving forward for that project. On a kind of a conceptual level or high level look, if we borrow for the project and are able to receive payments for that borrowing, our financial performance is maintained to a satisfactory level, all of our metrics. That's a lot to work out to get there, but overall it shows good performance. Another big caveat we talked about is that the rate impacts that we're showing here in this plan are modest, but we have not captured the pass-through from Allentown Division projects. That's going to come out a little bit later in our budget process as we understand each year how much of the project cost gets shifted over to suburban municipalities. And as we look forward, the Act 537 plan includes some projects that are a little bit further outside of this 5-year window. So we'll see those start to come in a little bit more each year as we roll out new projects. So look forward to seeing those, but those will increase our costs. And depending on how we make decisions, especially about that parallel interceptor. So a lot of unknowns with this plan, but this is our best outlook that we have to put everything together in a single plan and give us something to work with for forecasting. So again, this is a repeat of the prior slide, except that we have now completed the presentation of the draft plan. And we're now, I guess, officially in public comment period. We have printouts of the suburban plan for those who are here, and they can be mailed out to other board members who are not here in person today. So when we get public comments back, we do expect some from the planning commission, City of Allentown, potentially the county, and maybe some of the municipalities. We'll package those up and bring those back to you along with any other changes that have come up. If you have comments, questions, you can funnel those through me, and we'll try to answer them in our final presentation in October as well.
Just had one question from way back in the beginning, as far as the office expansion, I thought we were talking like $4 million, not $2 million.
Well, we're going to value engineer whatever we do.
Okay.
You know, so yes, I cut that budget drastically. I think it was the cost per square foot was really high.
Okay.
And assuming we're doing something more modest or something different.
Okay.
I know that's a vague explanation, but that's the best I have.
Make it the plan.
Yeah.
That's all we have on that one.
Okay, move on to the next one.
You want to get into the next topic on the agenda?
Are we gonna do the administrative?
That was included. That was the first part of the presentation.
Okay, so then we're on to the next one. Okay, so next on our agenda under finance and administration is the draft omnibus resolution delegation of board duties. It's a discussion topic only. It is the yellow documents in the board package, and digital board packet pages 8 to 18.
All right. So I'll tee this up, but I'm hoping that it will spark some discussion. And I'm also going to turn to Kevin Reed, our solicitor, to help with some of the conversation as well. About 2 years or so ago, we began talking with the board about roles and responsibilities, and looked at our bylaws and did a bunch of things. And we identified, or the staff identified, a gap that we wanted to solve, which is looking at all of the prior resolutions that delegate responsibility from the board to the staff. It's very difficult to work with all the historical documents. And specifically, I have a printout here, it's many pages long, from our prior solicitor, Brad Landon. He compiled this for me before he retired. But we have 52 resolutions dating back to 1975 that delegate various responsibilities from the board to staff. And it's all kinds of different things, from signing documents or enrolling in insurance plans or joining organizations, also purchasing thresholds, voting for certain things. There's just a lot of different things, 52 different resolutions over the past almost 50 years. So, and to give you an example, this just happened recently. We were asked by an organization to provide proof that I, as the CEO, have authority to sign something. And so I was able to find a resolution from 1990 that delegated that specific responsibility to the general manager. And then I have another resolution from 2016 or 15, something like that, that changed the title from a general manager to a CEO. So the two of those historical documents together, we think, meet that need. It worked? Okay, that's great. But it's challenging, needless to say. And with having a newer solicitor on board and some new staff members on board, it becomes very difficult to know sometimes, does this go to the board, or can I sign this thing or not? So working with the team and with Kevin, our solicitor, we drafted something to look at. And the idea of this draft, what we're calling an omnibus resolution, is modeled after what we've seen other authorities, municipal authorities do, where once a year or once every other year, they just reauthorize one resolution that includes all of the things that are delegated to staff. And so if titles change, or we want to add something or change something, we have one document to update on some kind of a routine basis. So maybe I'll turn it to you, Kevin, to sort of review what you put together.
Sure.
for us.
So I think that's a good overall summary. A couple points on the overall summary, and then maybe dive a little bit into kind of the framework of the resolution. So really what we're talking about here is kind of two governing documents. One is the Municipal Authorities Act, which gives the board powers and duties, responsibilities. The others, as Liesl indicated, bylaws. So that's kind of the formation of the board. And both of those, both the Authorities Act and the bylaws, authorize the board to delegate certain responsibilities to others. And so that's the general nature even of the old resolutions, it was piggybacked off of the Authorities Act and then also the bylaws. A couple things to bear in mind. There's a couple of key, what I'll call defined terms in here, because historically what has happened for the authority has been that there are certain authorized signers for certain types of documents and certain authorized signers for other types of documents. And that's kept here. But I want the board to conceptualize a couple things. First and foremost, throughout the document, as you read and you get familiar with it, there are those who are called approvers. Okay, well, who are the approvers? The approvers are your CEO, your chief executive officer, and your chief financial officer and their designations. So that's a classification that's important to recognize, because as we go down some of the functional items, there are certain documents that fall in that bucket. They're approvers, CEO and CFO, and that's who's delegated the authority. No one else has delegated the authority, okay? The second group is a little bit larger, and that also includes the CEO, the CFO as well, but also the accounting supervisor, the controller, and other similar functionalities. So those folks are the authorized financial transaction persons, okay? So that's another defined term. A broader group than the approvers. And as you'll see, as you work down the documents, it will make sense that when you have the authorized financial transaction persons, they're in financial transactions, where the CEO and CFO, they're in financial transactions, but there are also other elements that go beyond financial transaction. And then lastly, there are a group of folks who are authorized to attest. That includes your human resource manager, support specialist, executive, administrative support specialist, your controller, and your solicitor. And then I think the best way to kind of just, if you want to go online, we could do that, but I don't think we have time to do that. Broad buckets. Under section 4, which is here, you'll see that these are for approvers. So this is the CEO and CFO, and there's some broad categories. There's the bond issue. And let me start here. The bond issue is still authorized by the board, right? There's not going to be a bond issue unless it's authorized by the board. But then there's some follow-up actions that need to happen, right? There's things that have to happen with the rating agencies. There's things that have to happen with closing documents. That's what's going to be assigned to the CEO and CFO to administer signing those documents, subject initially to board approval. Okay, and that's historically how it's happened. So it's not a change. It's just memorializing it in one document. And then you have categories such as insurance and employee-related matters. That's also going to be for the approvers. Then you have things such as general purchasing and equipment-related managers. That's also going to be for the approvers, CEO and CFO. And you have things such as general operational items, authorization letters for the auditor, federal surveys and reports. That's going to be for the CEO and CFO. Once again, This is not a departure from anything that's done in the past. It's pulling everything together in one resolution. Probably the big item, I think that will need to be reviewed and discussed and determined, falls into this category of general purchasing and equipment related matters. Because there are different approval thresholds that are set forth in the current draft of the document. And I think that that's going to foster conversations regarding appropriate levels, I would say. That makes sense, that are consistent with historical practices, but also makes sense for moving forward as well. And then let me just skip down to, so real estate and contract items also fall within that approver CEO and CFO, policies, CEO and CFO. So that's kind of under bullet item number 4. Broad item number 5 is where we get to that other group, the more expanded group, the authorized financial transactions persons, which is a mouthful. Open and maintaining accounts, lock boxes, deposit agreements, withdraw and transfer funds. That fits into that type of group. A lot of banking items, budget authorizations, endorsing of checks, books and records of the organization. So those are kind of the large bucket items. So it's designed, once again, to follow historical resolutions, put it all into one place. 2 broad groups, approvers and authorized financial transaction persons who are signatories. And let me stop there.
You did mention that the approvers also have the ability to designate to somebody else to do it, so it kind of does go behind those 2 entities.
It does. It does.
And does the board have the opportunity when those such designees are assigned?
In this draft, it wouldn't necessarily come back to the board if there's other designees. I'll let Lisa speak to this, but I would think historically that hasn't been utilized much. I'll give you an example that I'm very familiar with when it comes to into the bond area. I don't see other signatures other than Ed's and Lisa's on those documents. But maybe you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I think that this has been used very sparingly, but it actually has been used. I'll give you an example. Actually, most recently, there is a resolution, and it's covered in this draft as well, to join organizations and vote as a member of that organization. That's designated to me or to the CFO. We have a meeting coming up in a couple of weeks for the Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association where there is a vote that's required. I can't be at that meeting, and I've designated Chris to vote on my behalf. So that's the kind of situation where it's been used. But certainly this is just a discussion and just a draft, so we could put guardrails around that designation process to whatever is desired by the board. We also have a hand raised by Sean.
Oh, John, question.
Yeah, just a couple questions. So if we're looking at on page 4, item C, so if we're talking about that's hypothetically speaking, a construction contract that's 150,000, and the threshold there is 250,000. So that construction contract of 150,000, would that still come to the board for review and approval?
Yeah, the purchasing thresholds, I think, really requires more discussion, more analysis with the board. This is very different from what we're doing today. So what we're doing today is really focused only on capital. So capital projects that you're primarily seeing capital projects, and if it's in the operational budget today, you're not seeing that at all, no matter what the cost is. If it's a purchase that's within our operational budget or a construction project, the annual budget, right? Also within the capital budget, those annual projects that Chuck just went through for the suburban division, projects that are lumped into that category for the most part are not brought to the board unless it hits certain kinds of thresholds. So what we're proposing here is a change to that, subject to, I think, understanding more what that means. How much more stuff do you want to see is really the question.
Sure.
But the other piece of the threshold relates to the professional services authorization, which currently is set at $40,000, which seems really low. And so we are proposing to increase that to $100,000. But by adding in all this operational stuff, it could potentially mean that you see more stuff that you're not seeing.
Sure. Yeah, I just take note of the, I was going through this and I took note of the fact that on A and B of this section, A references requires board approval, and then B is within board approved budget. So I see where our kind of role comes in there. And then once you go on to C and so and subsequently D and so on and so forth, that board language, is no longer there. So I just wanted to, kind of determine where the qualifier was and where, in some of these aspects where we come in and others where we, it may make sense to delegate it to a staff person, a CEO, so on and so forth. Just wanted to be kind of clear on all of it.
I have a question, comment. This is really a changing governance board, and it's a lot of stuff. And quite frankly, it's hard to get my arms around this as to what's in bounds, what's out of bounds, what's good, what's not so good. Is this, you mentioned we went to other organizations, I guess, to borrow, beg, or steal some of this stuff. But I just, sitting here, I have a hard time deciding, is this appropriate? Is it inclusive? Is it not inclusive? Is there something that, let's pick the worst case situation. I can't think of it. We can probably think of something. And something the wheel comes off the wagon someplace. It comes back to the board. You folks should have been on top of this. You delegated something you never should have done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like a deer in the headlights on all this. Beats me. I don't know where to get at it. Now, unfortunately, I have nothing to suggest here. I'm just uncomfortable trying to wade into the lake here, trying to figure out how to grapple with some of the issues and the organization of everything and does that sound right?
There's a lot here to delve into, a lot of changes or things being brought up that we haven't thought about for some time. So I think the answer to that is that we've talked about having a governance committee before and let a couple board members meet with staff and get into those issues and really assess the value of each change and the scope of each change and the limits of each change. Plus, it'd be nice to see what it was before versus what's being proposed now, so we can question the need for the new limit being set. So my proposal is to, and this was suggested, to establish the governance committee that we had before talked about a couple of years ago, and to designate some people on the board to meet with staff and to hash through the details of this rather than all of us going through all these questions. But let's let a number of board members spend time and effort over the next month or two at the most to go through these issues. So I'll first of all say let's establish a governance committee. Second of all, I'd like volunteers first of all before I assign. So who would like to be involved in this? I've got a couple names on my list here that I think that two and maybe three at the most. And periodic.
Mr. Chairman, I'll volunteer.
Right. Sean?
I'll volunteer, and this will be interesting for me because I'm on the governance committee of the Da Vinci Science Center.
Yeah.
And maybe that way I can tap into that resource.
Sure. One more.
And we're pretty organized, by the way.
And Linda. Okay. So we got Sean, Ted, and Linda. and ask staff to reach out to those members of the new government committee and to work through this document and come back as a recommendation as to acceptance, changes, whatever, within the next couple months.
I just have one question, very minor question. I started reading this and the second paragraph, I got there. The last line refers to agents, employees, and servants. Is that necessary to have a word servants in there?
It is an old archaic term that certainly it could be removed.
It's really bothers
We're
me.
moving forward, are we? All right, go ahead. Some more comments?
Just some brief comments. I think we talked about this at that holiday retreat we had, actually,
Yes.
so I think it's a good idea to have the committee. I think it would be good for Kevin to be part of those meetings as well. And my big question on the purchasing is, you know, the professional services are one thing, but how are we navigating and making sure that someone can just purchase something up to $250,000 and the public bidding limit's 21,200. So that's clearly defined. I also think that if it's not in there, and if I missed it, there should be some documentation of how emergencies are handled. And I know now, is that in there?
It is in there somewhere.
Maybe I missed it because I've just skimmed through it, but so.
Very good question. I could answer one of those questions, Jeff. There is notation here that the financial thresholds are established separate from the bidding thresholds. Those have to be complied.
So those would still come back to the board for approval?
Basically what it says is that those who are authorized, depending on what level selected, still have to follow the bidding requirements. If it's board level, have to follow the bidding requirements. If it's administrator, they have to follow the bidding requirements.
I know there's a whole discussion about co-stars and purchases and authorizing labor through co-stars and all of that stuff. I just want to make sure if we're doing any of that, it's all clearly been approved and legal and, you know, I's dotted, T's crossed.
Yeah, two thoughts, and I'm actually skimming here, and I think we may have missed the emergency piece, so we'll definitely make sure that gets placed in
Yeah,
the
that's
draft.
important. Yes.
And I think the other piece is that, the thresholds that are listed here are, what is proposed for what comes to the board, but within the staff, there's a lower set of thresholds for when a manager can approve versus when it has to go through Ed or myself. And those are in our purchasing system kind of programmed, so we wouldn't be able to approve something that doesn't have the 3 quotes or the, you know, certain guidelines. So there's other internal controls around that as well.
Right, no, I understand that, but my experience has always been if it's an actual public formal bid that the chairman of the authority has to sign it, maybe that's different. Maybe it's been done differently here. You know, getting 3 quotes and all of that stuff, that's completely different. Anybody can sign that.
Yeah.
I didn't know if on the public bidding, it actually has to be an authority member to approve that bid and the contract and all that good stuff.
Now, if we're bidding something now, if it's part of the operational budget.
That's been approved, but okay, gotcha. Okay.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I think we've got enough path forward on this one. Staff will contact the committee members and set up a meeting, and
yeah,
you can elect the chairman, get together with chairperson and decide Kevin being there for the first meeting, subsequent meetings.
very good, thank you.
All right, let's move on then to underwater. We have a topic. We have 3 topics. First one is the lead service line replacement project, cycle 1. Seeking approval. It's the blue document within our board package, and it's digital board package, pages 19 to 35.
Jason has wheeled himself up.
Say that.
Don't be shy, Dave.
On the back, it's all right. So I'll just briefly introduce it. Jason's going to present, this is construction phase authorization to replace about 150 lead services in the city of Allentown. So with that, take it away, Jason.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Chuck, for the brief introduction. Project overview, back in December 2021, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency issued the final regulatory framework for the lead copper rule of divisions, requiring to replace both public and private side line lead service lines. LCA has taken a proactive approach in developing an in-depth lead service line replacement program. The funding for this project itself represents a change of law with the city of Allentown and will be funded by the LCA Allentown Division. Penvest funding was awarded back on July 19th, 2023, consisting of a $1.5 million loan and a $3.3 million grant. Penvest funding amount will be adjusted based on final project costs, which are going to be here in this capital project authorization. Project status itself, in November 2023, the board authorized and approved the design bid phase of this project. Working closely with outside agencies, LCA obtained all approvals required for the lead cycle 1 construction phase. This approval, like we had mentioned, is for the construction phase of this project, and it's in the Allentown Division lead service line project, which includes the replacement of approximately 150 lead service lines, that's both public and private, and potholing investigation of approximately 450 services in the city. The bidding summary, which I included here, the project was advertised for bid on July 12th. Mandatory pre-bid meeting was held virtually July 23rd. We had 8 contractors in attendance on that meeting, which was pretty good. Bids were open on August 12th, and we had 4 contractors actively bid on the project, which are shown here in the table, and you can see the bid amounts that was bid there. We did do a background check on PAC 1. PAC actually specializes in site work and installation of water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer systems. PAC actually did our Veracruz sewer project. This past year, they did do our suburban main replacement project up in North Whitehall. Did a very good job on both those projects. So LCA staff recommends award of the construction contract to PAC 1.
If I could just interject, they also just completed the force main project for the Upper Western Lehigh pump station.
Also, part of this capital project authorization, just like we do in the water main replacement projects in the city of Allentown, is a final restoration cost sharing agreement with the city of Allentown to handle any of the surface mill and overlay and the ADA ramp work that is provoked when doing these types of projects in the city right away. Also part of the capital project authorization is the construction engineering and management and Penvest administration. That would be going to Gannon Fleming. There is a laundry list of items that they would be doing under that actual professional service authorization. To name a few, I can go through some of their professional service authorization services, such as review contract bonds and insurances, coordinate and process award documents, conduct pre-construction and monthly progress meetings, review and maintain all submittals, prepare and submit record drawings, administer Penvest closeout documentation, and coordinate the project closeout. Also, there would be a professional service authorization for construction inspection to our local Keystone Consulting engineers here, just down the street. They'll also be providing full-time construction observation and act as the daily field contact person for LCA. On-site project coordination, maintain daily records of the project activities, review documentation for change orders, review monthly pay estimates along with Gannon Fleming, and perform substantial and final completion inspections. So the schedule itself, assuming approval today, at today's August 26th board meeting, all work will be anticipated to be completed by June 30th, 2020. So what we're seeking for in a capital project authorization in the amount of $4,024,857 Part of that will be a professional service authorization to Gannett Fleming in the amount of $171,520. A professional service authorization to Keystone Consulting Engineers for $75,000. A general construction contract to Pact One for $2,376,445. A paving cost sharing agreement with the city of Allentown in the amount of $701,892. Anybody have any questions?
I just have a quick question, in terms of the laundry list for Gannett Fleming. About near the end of the list, one of the bullets is compile and assemble documentation of project costs and prepare online Penvest reimbursement request forms. Are those, the kind of records as well as those reimbursement request forms as they come through, are they being routed through the LCA before they go back to Penvest?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, Sean.
Okay,
Quick question, just on the money. So it looks like Penvest approved 4.9 million and the project's 4 million. So if it all goes well and comes in at budget, do they take it away from the loan or the grant or both? How does that work?
Well, we've asked that question and preliminary answer is that everything would be brought down proportionately. And unfortunately, while our project is coming in at 4 million, the $702,000 for the paving would be excluded from Penvest funding.
Okay.
So it's even less
Okay,
because they don't pay for paving. Yeah.
thank you.
While we're speaking of the paving agreement, I just want to be clear that there are some open items that are highlighted in yellow, just about dates and minor details that we would want the authorization to finalize the agreement and for me to sign the agreement.
explain that, sorry.
There's some,
I saw the yellow in there, the
Yeah, the-
X's where there's supposed to be numbers.
that's just to finalize the language of the agreement, basically approving the agreement in substantially this form and authorizing me to sign it.
I have my usual question, just you bet a little bit. You left $900,000 on the table, which is astounding to me. The next two bids are pretty tight. You glance at that and you wonder, was someone asleep at the wheel when they put the number together? I'm assuming the answer is no. You broke the project down, you walked them all through it.
Yes. So we had mandatory pre-bid, we bid on the project itself. The alignment with the actual numbers, yeah, it was quite a good sticker shock, at least the 800,000, like you said, Ted, on the table. They did attend the pre-bid meeting as necessary.
I don't know if Jeff has any comment on this. I don't see public bids often in my career, but this is like.
So I can tell you, I worked with Pact One and Pact Two, and they've actually won a number of jobs and are the low bidder. I just had another project come in the opposite direction. We had 10 people take out plans. We got 2 bids because people are busy and the low bid was double the engineer's estimate. So they were just all over the place some days. It just depends.
These aren't even real bids. I mean, having been in the business, you can't actually estimate a job and come up with that much of a difference. It's impossible, literally impossible.
We had a meeting with Pact last week about another project, some change order issues with the suburban main replacement project. And we talked about this issue and they're comfortable with their number. According to the instructions to bidders, a bidder has 48 hours to, if there's an error in their bid, if they can document some error that they made, they can retract their bid.
That's in Article 14 of the
Instructions to bidders. So they knew that. And they chose not to.
I'm fine with it. Just astounds me that.
Well, yeah, it always makes me nervous because they know they left that money on the table, so they're gonna be very aggressive going after change orders.
That's the next thing you think about.
Yeah.
I do recognize with Munis and project management, we would have a better accountability on the costs, whether they were on time and everything. But those projects that they have done for us, this is the lowest bidder. have they finished the project on time and at cost?
Yeah. The Upper Western Lehigh, the force main, they did that faster than the schedule. They completed that quicker. Now there were some issues in there, that we're gonna have to work out, some minor change orders. Legitimate, but they performed well. So actually, a gentleman that used to work here is the project manager at PACT.
Okay. All right, we've had before us, construction project authorization, well defined by Jason. So I don't have to go through and read all the information all over again. I need a motion and a second. Motion by Amir and seconded by Ted. For approval of this capital project authorization, the total is $4,024,857 with all the details, and for management to complete the negotiations and agreement with Allentown and City for the paving portion of this. Okay. Any questions by anybody? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jason. All right, next on the agenda, we have another water issue, lead service line replacement project cycle 2. Seeking approval. This is the green documents in our board package. Digital board packet pages 36 to 45. Same people present.
Jason's on a roll.
I'll just keep it going here. Kick it off with the project background and overview. Just as similar as it is in cycle 1. The requirements of the Environmental Protection Agency. The cycle 2 project, instead of focusing on 150 services, the cycle 2 project will center on identifying and replacing approximately 1,000 solely private side lead service lines that meet a specific criteria throughout the city. LCA has requested approximately $12 million in this grant funding from Penvest for the project itself. The amended scope here on the design bid side of things, which you guys already had approved back in February, but that's provided by CDM Smith. The project objective is to replace, like I'd mentioned, those 1,000 lead services currently connected to an existing ductile iron water main within the city of Allentown. The amendment itself, the revised amended project scope encompasses specialized assistance in detailed tasks and activities related to data management, door-to-door customer canvassing, field verification and inspections. For many areas throughout the city of Allentown, the material type of private service laterals is unknown, and pre-construction inspections are required to determine which service line require replacement. This is a time-consuming, detailed task requiring a team of qualified individuals to enter homes to identify pipe material. So instead of potholing necessarily outside the home, since we already know there's ductile iron water main in the ground with a piece of copper on the public side, to go ahead and get inside the home, look at that lateral material entering the home, and determine if it is truly lead or galvanized that's in the home, which would require that private side replacement. In addition to canvassing work, CDM Smith will provide communication support for the project, focusing on the development of bilingual customer education materials, communication strategies for renters, and instructional videos. Due to the highly detailed nature of the project and the direct customer involvement required, this additional support was requested by LCA to supplement existing internal capabilities. There's just a lot of coordination going on. When trying to get in and identify 1,000 services, we may have to get into 3,000 or 4,000 homes to try to figure and find out the 1,000. So that's why we're coming to you guys for this amended design bid phase approach with CDM Smith. So this amendment, what we're seeking for in that professional service authorization itself is in the tune of $214,055 for professional services that will be additionally rendered, which is the data management support services, door-to-door canvassing, and field investigation inspection services. So all the documentation that will come along with their canvassing support.
Okay,
Any questions?
How does this work? Give us an example. You send out a notice by mail,
Yeah, so there will be a notification that'll be sent out by mail to all those customers where we have a known ductile iron water main that we've replaced here at LCA, but also in times gone past by the city of Allentown. And of areas that are identified in our GIS system where we potentially know there's some galvanized or lead that may be on the private side. Canvass those blocks, so to speak, send out notifications, and CDM Smith will start doing their scheduling to get into the home to verify, to make sure what's there. And that way we can really hone in our project scope and detailed design and specifications once we go to construction.
So Jason, just to refresh our memory, the 933,000 they were previously authorized for, what was that?
That itself was for their plan specifications for getting to those 1,000 services in a more defined scope. So which would involve more of a highly detailed survey and plan creation. That itself is still kind of a wash here as far as those efforts go. Now they'll be more dispersed, and those plan creations will be more of a single lot by lot creation instead of a full-on block survey requiring a whole slew of different requirements, identifying other utilities that may be impacted, so on and so forth.
Was that a cycle 1 project also? And is
No.
this cycle 2 or
This
is
is cycle 2.
so all this work has been all cycle 2?
Currently here in this amendment.
Of the 900,000 was cycle 1.
No, that's cycle 2.
I also said, okay, that's what I was trying to understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
other questions? Okay, we have before us a professional services authorization for the Allentown Division Lead Service Line Replacement Program, Cycle 2, for bid design and construction phase services amendment to CEM, $214,055. Motion by Linda,
I'll second.
second by Sean. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Brian and board. And
Last item under water is water filtration plant, fluoride system upgrades. Seeking approval is the gray document in our board package, digital board packet pages 46 to 71.
Last but not least, so Amy Rohrbach is going to present this project, which is essentially an asset management upgrade project of old equipment that has reached the end of its service life. And there's a operator safety component to this as well. So I'll let Amy take it away.
Thanks, Chuck. As Chuck mentioned, this is the existing fluoride system is at the end of its useful life. It was installed around 2000 when the city started dosing fluoride into the system. Their ordinance was in 1999 until everything went through design and construction. 2000 is when it went online. So the equipment, the tank, it's at the end of its useful life. It's over 20 years old. So it is in need of replacement. We had a conceptual design analysis done earlier this year, and we looked at possibly changing the type of chemical being dosed to try to find something that maybe was a little less risky, if you will, less volatile. Unfortunately, it made more sense to just stick with the existing, I'm probably gonna butcher this because I'm hydrofluorosilicic acid. Did I get that right? Okay, thank you. Otherwise known as FFA. So that is what it's currently dosed. We also looked at sodium fluoride and sodium fluorosilicate, but those are dry salts and you need to dissolve, and it added a whole other set of problems trying to. So we're proceeding with sticking with the FSA and pretty much replacing in kind. But as Chuck mentioned, there is a safety concern because currently there's the bulk tank, which is when the tankers come and deliver, they fill that bulk tank. And that feeds into a day tank, which is what is used to dose on a daily basis. That day tank needs to be filled on pretty much every day, every other day. And that is filled manually. So two operators need to go down to the fluoride room. One of them needs to suit up, safety glasses, apron, the whole 9 yards, to be able to manually operate the valve to fill this day tank. And there's potential safety risks involved. So this new upgrade will include automating the filling of that day tank. We'll still need an operator to be there to visually make sure everything's going okay, but they won't be manually opening valves and closing valves. So it'll provide more safety for our operators. So the system will include upgrading the existing bulk storage tank. And in order to access said tank and bring a new tank in, we are going to need to add a roof hatch to the top of the building, because when it was installed in 2000, there was no roof hatch. I think they put the tank in and put the roof on top. So in order to get the new tank in, we will need this roof hatch so they can lower the tank in. So there'll be a new 5,000 gallon tank, bulk tank, the day tank, which is a 250 gallon tank, the piping, valves, meter pumping, the metering pumps, level indicator, a transfer pump to transfer from the bulk tank into the day tank, and necessary electrical upgrades. There'll be a new safety shower as part of this upgrade, because the existing one's old, and we're going to upgrade that while we're at it. Some HVAC improvements for ventilation of the room, and this is for, so we're requesting professional service authorization. We received 2 proposals, Verdantis and HDR. We reviewed the proposals, both were qualified consultants. We found them both qualified. However, we felt Verdantis put together a more detailed scope, more well-defined, and their schedule is slightly more aggressive. They are slightly more expensive than HDR. We just felt that Verdantis was the better team for this project. So we're requesting professional service authorization for design and bidding phase services with Verdantis for $86,769 for a total capital project authorization of $96,769.
And all that, Verdantis has quite a bit more hours built into the design. So we just think that they will do a better job, a more thorough design.
What was the price difference?
Price difference
About
is
20,000.
22,000. I'm sorry, 2023.
Have you benchmarked to see what is the standard fluoride chemical the other authority use?
We did look in the planning
We looked
phase,
at
we
3.
did look at different chemicals, yeah.
It seems to vary, especially with larger facilities like Allentown facilities. It seems to be more standard to use the liquid. Even though there's more of a safety hazard, it can be very difficult to use salts and other products that you are then mixing. Just the containment, or not the containment, the actual apparatuses to keep things mixed and unclogged can be somewhat challenging.
Safety, what is this? Explain to me, what is the safety issue?
It can release a hydrofluoric acid.
HF?
Yeah. So it's
So
not good.
we have the full hazard containment suits. If there's any that spills on the ground, we're in full containment suits.
HF because it's not stable in certain pH, or what causes the decomposes to HF?
That I'm not totally positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the more acidic chemicals that we deal with. So, sulfuric acid is very acidic. Hydrofluorosilicic acid is very low pH.
Yeah.
That's the main hazard.
two board members doing calculations on probably the prices. So it's $23,000 difference in.
The hours.
Feel that
The hourly rate's about the same. $150 an hour. It's all in the hours.
Well, we looked at that very closely. I'll just add to what Amy said. We were concerned with the HDR's level of effort. So one of the metrics we use is cost per sheet. So it should usually be around 7,000 to 8,000 cost per sheet. HDR's cost per sheet was around 3,000. We just thought like that doesn't bode well for the future. Like eventually we're either going to get substandard design documents or there's going to be a change order. We just thought the number that Verdantis provided was appropriate for the number of sheets.
And because it's a professional services agreement, we don't have to take the lowest.
Correct.
All right, so you're confident with the bid then?
You don't even have any relatives working for this out.
Okay, we have before us a capital project authorization for downtown division of water filtration plant fluoride system upgrades. It's actually a replacement, correct? With some automation. That includes a professional services authorization to Verdantis for designing and building phase for $86,769.
So moved.
All right, Norma made the motion and Jeff made the second. All right. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
All right, wastewater, we have no issues under wastewater. We have monthly financial reviews, which is the digital board package pages 72 to 84 for July 2024 report. Weight documents that we have in our package. Ed.
Getting that smile like you want me to go fast.
No. You thorough as you always are.
Okay, so for July, we take a look at the month. Actually, all good. Income statement for all three funds shows positive numbers. Shows favorable variance to forecast, except for city division, where we had a little bit lower revenue for the month. So cash flow wise, for the month, we were negative in suburban water, negative in suburban wastewater. City division was positive altogether. That made it positive. So it's a large number for the city. However, on a forecast variance basis, we're good with water, good with wastewater, and again, down a little bit on the city division, and it's mostly because of the lower operating. Year to date, looks pretty good, I think, as you look at suburban water, all water, wastewater, city division, all three are positive, and all three have favorable forecast variances year to date through July. Cash flow statement, we're positive in suburban water, a little bit negative in wastewater, well, really good in city division. I have a pro forma sheet I'm going to show you later on in the deck here that I'll explain how that's coming about. I think it'll be easier to look at the numbers. It was all good in terms of forecast variances year to date as well. All three funds are positive. Okay. Full year, really haven't changed much the forecast. I tweaked the city a little bit. I know Capital Works gave me some project numbers to use that I have not rolled in yet. We will be rolling them in, and then I'll take a better look at operating revenues and operating expenses. So for the moment, we'll kind of just tweaked a little bit where we were with the Q2 forecast. So for the full year, suburban water is positive, wastewater negative, and city division positive by a big amount. On a year-to-date basis to budget, we're positive in suburban water, positive in wastewater and on the net income side, and then off in the city division mostly because of additional loan fees, which I'll cover on the pro forma. Cash flow, I like, all three positive, all three were supposed to be positive, and the forecast variances are good. As we take a look at suburban water, we finished year to date, almost $500,000 better than forecast. As you look at the step variances along the way, you got positive news across all categories: operating revenues, expenses, and non-operating, including interest expense being a little bit lower. On a full year basis, we will look better than budget again across operating revenues, expenses, and non-operating items. We have interest expense being up a little bit compared to budget, but not much. So suburban water looks pretty good. Cash flows. Cash flow for the year to date was $406,000 better than forecast. Got a big help from cash from operations, which is basically operating revenues, along with operating expenses being a little bit lower too. We got lower debt service. CapEx was up a little bit. Like I said, we have some more formalized work to do on the CapEx side. And investing is other is up because we're getting still better rates on CD balances. Cash flows full year. We think we'll finish at 332, better than budget. And that's mostly on cash flow from operations, mostly due to operating. Looking at the metrics, debt service is 2.32. Obviously, that's better than our budget for the year, also better than our internal target, and we think we'll finish 2.10, which will be better across the board too. Operating ratio is 1.27, again, better than the budget target, better than our internal target of 1, and we think we'll just settle down to 1.22, which will be better as well. Days cash on hand, we're above 400, obviously better than the 180. And however, with later interest expenses going out the door, we'll come down to about 324, and that'll still be a really good number. Days cash on hand. Suburban wastewater, year-to-date income, we're up $1 million. Again, pretty much favorable variances across all the categories. Biggest one being operating expenses, but you get higher operating net income. You got additional non-operating income related to investments as well, and interest expense was lower too. Full year, we up 171 on income, again, pretty much across the board on all categories. So as we look at year-to-date cash flows, we're $807,000 better. Basically, good news from cash from operations. Again, better operating revenues, slightly lower operating expenses. Debt service was a little bit lower. Apex was up a bit, that pulled some of it down, and then we got favorable interest income to help. As we look at full year, we think we'll be about 2,300, and this might change as we get a better look at operating revenues and expenses, but for right now, we have a little bit lower cash from operations and we get offset from higher interest income. In terms of metrics, debt service of 6, compared to the budget for the year at 4.67. Keep in mind, we have not borrowed anything yet, and we expected to do some borrowing in suburban wastewater with respect to this year. I'm just struggling with how to time it right now. So we think we'll come down to 4.80 once we do that, and that'll still be better than the budget and better than the internal target. Operating ratio, well, we budgeted below 1, it's at below 1, although it's better than the budget amount. In days cash on hand, we're 209 days. We think we'll come down to 265. All of that is better than our target of 180. All right. Income year to date on the city side, $3.3 million of favorable variance year to date. You can see that's mostly coming from non-operating items, which would be interest income playing a large role in this. Lower interest expense as a result of, well, what we did when we refinanced. Income full year down 2.7. You can see that's really getting nailed by the $3.3 million worth of loan fees that are out there with respect to budget, because we borrowed for 3 years instead of 1. Cash flows year to date. Up by 9.9. Well, you got a lot of money from the debt service or from the refinancing and the $55 million worth of capital instead of 8. So it's all good across every category. Full year cash flows, same thing. You're up $48 million because of the way we did the financing. So I think the next one is that pro forma. Yes. So all I'm trying to do here is say the 2024 forecast for the total year is $45.8 million. When we did the budget, well, we said we were going to borrow $8.6 million, and that was going to give us $2.9 million of cash. So if I take that budget and adjust it for how we would have borrowed by adding the additional 2 years, you would have taken on an additional cash flow of $48 million because of debt proceeds. And so the budget adjustment would push us up $44 million. And so I'm comparing the 2024 forecast of 45.8 to 47.2. And if you look at the difference, which is in the very last column, it's saying operating revenues are up a little bit, operating expenses are down, so that's more favorable. And basically where we're off a little bit is we did hedge a little bit in I'll call it non-cash working capital changes, which is basically timing of receivables and payables. So I'm showing a little bit of unfavorableness to hedge. I think that'll probably change as we look at the forecast again. Everything else is better than budget except for the $3,300. So I just wanted to show you when I say the difference between borrowing for 1 year and borrowing for 3 years. Metric wise, 2.05 debt service coverage versus 2.13, so down a little bit. We think we'll hit 2.20, and that'll take us above budget target. Will also take us above our covenant target as well. Operating ratio 2.18. Think we'll come in at 1.74. That'll be better across the board too against budget and target. And 355 days cash on hand will settle to 269, but still be better than 180. Scorecard. So Suburban Water got a perfect score for the month, 14 out of 14. Suburban Wastewater had been running in the 9-10. It got up to 12 with just 2 negatives in terms of cash flow being negative and operating ratio, which was budgeted down, so it's less than 1. So not bad. And on the city side, we're at 12 as well, and operating revenues are just a little bit below forecast right now. And net income is down as a result. So I think the scorecard looks good for all 3 funds. Okay, just to kind of sum up what I said before, I did not jump into a Q3 forecast. I got some things to look at in terms of operating revenues and expenses. We'll incorporate Chuck's group's forecast when we get to the model for August. Year-to-date performance on income and cash flows, it's all good. We're still getting better than we expected. Investment income on invested balances. And like I said, we've got work to do on the forecast side and the budget side. Questions?
Yeah, I always ask this question and I forget the answer. We should give all the time. You bought a CD from the First Financial Bank in Dakota, South Dakota. Talk about how that happened.
basically use an agent who's out there searching for the better interest rate structure that they can get. As long as they stay within PMAA rules and regulations. So, because we have to be careful about taking on risk. So they're out there searching for us within their parameters, trying to get us the best
You
interest.
see, there's an agent that
Yeah.
in the Dakotas someplace.
No, actually, this is a more in this area, but they can search on a very global.
And they get a fee for a finder's fee?
Actually, they get the fee from the bank that they actually do the investment with, so we don't even pay the fee.
What's the fee, just out of curiosity?
Usually the fees are in the neighborhood of 1%, like we do on loans, but we don't cover that. The bank that gets the ultimate instrument does that for us. So it's actually pretty good. I mean, we're getting fairly good rates, and any invested balances are not sitting there earning nothing.
Thank you.
There were some changes to the risk profile allowed for municipal authorities. When you say you're giving them risk parameters, are they using our risk parameters or the more lenient parameters that established?
So basically, they're following our financial guidelines. And they have our financial guideline book that explains what risk profile we want.
So we have not adjusted that risk profile to what's
I would say no. I mean, they became a little bit more lenient with respect to companies and et cetera. We don't do that. I mean, we stay in the realm of CDs and other type, very liquid investments. Yeah, I don't see any reason to take the money that we work very hard to get from our customers and then have it go away, so.
Okay, any questions for me? All right, moving on then, we have a monthly system operations overview. Digital board package pages 85 to 94, the July 2024 report was attached and included in our documents.
All right, thank you. As you mentioned, the July 2024 operational reports is in front of you. We will start out with some bad news. It was something that was missed previously. If you notice on the reportable safety incidents, there is now a 1 in the 2024 column. That did not happen in July. It was from a incident that was reported previously. At that time, we didn't necessarily have all of the information together in that report. There was, I believe, 5 days of restricted duty, but now it is caught up and documented in this report. In July, there was one incident. It was not an injury, but it was another vehicle incident. It was one of the hydro trucks was driving and the boom was not properly secured, and it ended up struggling one of the underpasses in the city. Moving on to page 2. The water production is actually almost to the peak, what it was last month as well. So we're really hitting peak water production at this point for the summer months. It goes for the Allentown division and the central division, and even all the way down to the small suburban systems. For wastewater, Klein's Island was 32.22 million gallons per day. And the treatment plant was 5.22 million gallons per day, which is in line with what we've been seeing. We did have 3.6 inches of rainfall in the month of July. I'm happy to report that there were no bypasses. However, we did receive 1 NOV, and that was for the Windwood system. We can touch base on it just a little bit here. There was 2 main breaks in Allentown. And other than that, we will switch on over to page 3. Overall, it was a fairly good month. There was 1 permit exceedance in Sand Spring that was for a fecal coliform. And we also did have 1 in the Windwood division, which was a ammonia exceedance. The NOV is attached to the top of the packet, and it outlined multiple exceedances from 2021 all the way up to 2024. There was quite a few from startup months of that new facility, as well as a couple that sort of outlined some of the wet weather events that we had earlier this year. We did lose a lot of the solids, a lot of biomass within the facility in the early months of this year, which caused about 2 months of some ammonia exceedances. Everything is pretty much lined out in the actual response to that meeting. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about it.
Any questions?
I have a question. I was looking at the last page of the financial statements, and on the list of development activity, there is an awful lot of development going on, as we know, in the Lehigh Valley. Do we have the capacity for all of this water system and sewage facilities at this time?
Yes. That's the short answer. Phil, you want to jump in and provide more detail?
Yeah, Norma, are you talking more on the infrastructure, or you talking about staff?
Well, I just looked at the last page and it said water system construction is occurring in the following developments, and water system plans are being reviewed in the following developments, and then sewer facilities. There's an awful lot of activity.
There is, yes, and to be honest, it's actually slowed down a bit. So yes, we're operating under, a connection management plan for the Kleins Island system. And short answer is yes. The infrastructure is there for now.
Okay.
It needs, a lot of work needs done to get it back into compliance with DEP.
But these developments some of them have been in process for quite some time. We just keep adding to it as new developments come in. From our projections for flows as well as in the water study, we have accounted for all of these in these plans. So
Won't they approved in the special study for the Act 537 plan? All the municipalities are asked what capacity they need it. So I would assume all of those are previously in that chunk of.
Yeah, correct. Anything that's been requested has been approved, and we've only used half of the request. So everything is in alignment. Everything is what is expected. Yes.
And this also includes high level wet water flows.
Yes. Can you clarify the question?
Well, with all the rain that we're having and all the I&I that we're having, I mean, what about, the overflows?
Yes, that's exactly why DP wants that plan as soon as possible. Yes, again, they've granted us a certain amount of allocation, and that's all we have to work with right now, pending submission of the plan.
I think if you look at Andrew's operations report, we see the averages from this year to last year. We don't see a lot of change on the water side, but on the wastewater side, we see average wastewater treatment at Kleins Island so far this year has gone up to 36 million gallons per day. That's quite a bit higher than normal because it's been a wetter year than normal. But that still suggests a significant amount of capacity available for the developments that are listed, as well as everything that's planned in the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions regarding the monthly system operations? All right, seeing none, staff comments? Solicitor comments?
Comments, thank you.
Any public comments on any topics whatsoever?
No, thanks, Brian.
No comment, thanks.
Thank you for being here. Board member comments. All right, let's see. Nothing else on this agenda. We are going to move, we're going to close this meeting and move into an executive session. The information for that Zoom meeting has been made available through an email from Diesel. And we'll start that in 25 after 2, which is let's see, we're about on time with that clock. 25 after. We're back here for the executive session to talk about two topics. One, potential litigation, the other being property acquisition discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.